Welcome back to Smores Indoors. Now, once again, here is your host, Corey, and his co-host for the show, Jonathan.
Welcome back to Smores Indoors tonight. It's Corey here, your host. Flying solo tonight. No Jonathan tonight, but I'm sure he's here in spirit. Welcome everyone here to the show, East of the Rockies, our little homage show to Art Bell, interview show about the paranormal. And tonight we have a special guest. She is a spirit medium with the St. Louis Paranormal Research Society. We want to welcome Rachael Murphy. Rachael, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight.
No problem. It's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So we're going to get right into it. I guess I'll start. I've talked quite a bit with people that my intro to the paranormal as a kid was the old Unsolved Mysteries show. You know, that really kind of spun my wheels when it came to the paranormal. What was kind of your intro to the paranormal when you were younger?
I briefly lived in a haunted house.
Oh, wow.
I was really, young, six, 7. And definitely an introduction for sure.
Was there anything that you can tell us about that? Any moments that stick out?
Yeah, I definitely saw things move around a room. A lot of interesting things that when you're young, adults just don't believe,
Right.
So, and, it's one of those things. I think sometimes children are a little bit more aware and sensitive to kind of like the spirit world because, they don't have that thing that tells them that it can't be real.
Right.
So I was exposed to a lot of activity that way when I was young. Eventually the adults did understand. They had their own experiences, but I got more of it and I got it sooner. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Was that experience what kind of set you on the path of doing what you do now?
Not necessarily, but it was, for me, it was always a very real thing.
Okay.
It was never, it was never a question in my mind, but it was always a very real thing. And I think, being so young, obviously that has an impression on you. But most of my life, I've been very sensitive to spirits and things like that. So, yeah, I guess that's part of it, part of the journey.
Right. So I mentioned you are a spirit medium there with the group in St. Louis. Is that something that, in your opinion, you have to be born with that gift, or is it something that people can kind of tune into later in life, or how does that work? Do you feel?
Everyone is capable of psychic abilities.
Okay.
Everyone. Psychic abilities, things that we think of like clairvoyance, have to do with kind of like a psychic sight or vision, for instance, are very related to the brow chakra or the forehead area. So they're connected to certain things that we can work on, which anybody can do that through meditation or but through the use of crystals or anything like that, just to develop an ability that they already feel that they might be sensitive to. But
Right.
yeah, all of that.
Okay. And one thing we definitely are going to talk about is the Ouija board, the seances you do, which if anyone wants to kind of see this, you can actually go to the St. Louis Paranormal Research Society's Facebook. There's some videos on there of you doing that. I was doing a little research and didn't realize, I guess it makes sense, but a lot of people think of Ouija boards and they think kind of the negative or the sinister aspect of it, but they really didn't start out that way. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the background of Ouija boards and things like that you've researched?
Well, I mean, Ouija boards are really just a tool of communication. So I think that negative or that like spooky kind of aspect just comes from, people are afraid of the unknown. And
Right.
when it comes to like communication, or when you make that connection with something and that moment that you realize that something else is really there, but you can't see it, you
Right.
don't know what it is, there is a fear there that most people have. And it's not really a negative thing at all. It's very positive, but yeah, I mean, it does kind of give people sometimes like a negative connotation to it. But with any tool, you do want to use caution.
Hmm.
Um, there are some circumstances that you could run into things that you're not going to be aware of, or you're not capable of dealing with on your own. So yeah, certain things can happen. But the Ouija board, was really just a tool of communication. And a lot of those tools were very popularized in like Victorian time periods of spiritualism, that movement of spiritualism.
Okay. We do have a question here in the chat from my friend Dan.
Yeah.
He asked, "Do you have a favorite Ouija board themed film, and also which one do you find to be the most authentic?"
A favorite Ouija board that what?
Ouija board themed film, like a movie.
Oh, that's a really good question. I, they're so like not realistic though.
Right.
Yeah, I can't really think of a favorite, because usually whenever I watch them, I'm like, that's so not how it is.
Right. Well, that's one thing, you were saying that, I was talking about the sinister aspect. That's really how the only way it's portrayed in movies like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
But as far as like, what was the second part of that question?
Which one did you find to be the most authentic? Which you kind
Oh,
of said
none.
none.
I love horror movies, and I love, movies about that, but none of them really portray
Right.
that
Right.
accurately.
Okay. I was going to ask this question later, but it kind of goes back to what you were talking about before. I guess not so much warnings, but what advice would you give people that are interested in kind of experimenting with a Ouija board for the first time, maybe?
I would say just realize that it is a tool, and to use caution, to go into it kind of in a respectful way. So I think a lot of times people use it as like as like a spooky aspect to a party, or after they've been drinking and things like that. I would never
Right.
recommend using the Ouija board if you're under the influence of anything, because it lowers your vibration, and you could draw in lower vibrational entities, which is what nobody wants.
Okay.
So I would start there, but I would just say, remember to say goodbye
Okay.
whenever you're done. Yeah, it's on the board for a reason. Remember to say goodbye, because
Okay.
the board actually opens up almost like a portal. And if
Right.
you don't say goodbye, you're leaving it open. So remember.
Okay. So when it comes to a Ouija board seance, what's kind of your process? What's kind of the things you do before you get started, and what's kind of the process of the whole event, I guess you could say?
I don't really have a lot of ritual to what I do. Rituals can serve a purpose for people. I think it can help them to like get in a certain mindset or a mood, maybe if they feel like they need that. I'm not somebody who feels like I need rituals to do that. So I'm in constant communication with spirits. I don't need a Ouija board to do that.
Right.
So there really is no preparation for me, other than you just never know what you're going to come across. I would say though, if you kind of are in the mindset of like, something bad is going to happen, you're kind of inviting negative experiences or entities. So I would just say, just be kind of open to the experience, to whatever comes through,
Right.
and not really, have a fear mindset in doing it.
Okay. How long have you been doing that? these seances with the Ouija boards?
With St. Louis Paranormal,
Yeah.
I have been working. I met Mark Farley, Dr. Mark Farley, who runs the St. Louis Paranormal, at least like the haunted tours. I met him a couple years ago and did some investigating in the Limp Brewery, which is a very haunted part of St. Louis history. But more recently, as far as like the live stuff, I have been working with them since I guess earlier this year.
Oh, okay, cool. Can you talk about a couple experiences you've had that may have been a little more intense than the normal experiences?
Sure. I mean, anytime you are opening up to spirit communication, you don't know what's going to come through. Most of the time, it's, moms and dads and aunts and uncles, things like that. A lot of times they have messages. A lot of times they just want to cross over because they're stuck, they're lost, and that's not where they are supposed to be. So a lot of the work that I'm doing is I'm actually crossing them over. So that's pretty much like run of the mill.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely, you never know who you're going to come across. It could be, a lot of times it's serial killers, it's murderers, it's, people who did bad things. And the reason they didn't cross over is because they knew they did bad things and they're afraid of where they're going. So you run into that a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there are non-human entities that you run into as well. Yeah, you just never know what you're going to get.
Have you ever been able to connect with someone and be able to track down who it was?
Like, did the history research behind it?
Yeah.
I never have. Now, we'll talk to someone and we'll find out, like, where they lived, because sometimes they're not even from the United States. But, United States, we're more familiar, but we'll find out, like, when they died, what they did for a living, where they lived. I know Mark, he has connected with someone, well, the two of us have, and it was someone where he grew up in the same county in West Virginia, and he knew a lot of, like, it was a woman, I believe. Yeah, a lot of, like, what she was saying, where she was from, and family and everything. So that's pretty interesting. But usually I don't stop and, like, research who they were and when they died and where, stuff like that.
Right. Okay. So I did want to jump in a little bit and talk about the St. Louis Paranormal Research Society. You talk about some of the stuff that they do in the community there and some of the things that people outside the group can get involved with.
They run the haunted tours. Basically, they're the place for haunted activities and tours in the St. Louis area. So there's a walking tour, which is a lot of, like, the Limp Brewery and history, kind of in that same little, like, neighborhood area, kind of right outside the outskirts of the Soulard area. And then there's also the Limp Mansion, which is separate from the brewery, but it's its kind of own separate tour. It's a beautiful mansion on its own. A lot of, like, rich family history, a lot of history from St. Louis. The Fox Theater is another haunted location that they do investigations out of. Those are the main ones in the St. Louis area. But mostly, like, walking tours and going through some of the more, like, haunted and more, like, famous haunted spots.
Okay. And real quick, I did want to shout out anybody in the chat that has any more questions. Please pop them in there. We'll be wrapping up shortly, but I want to make sure you guys get your questions in if you have any more. You want to talk a little bit more about the group you were talking about working with?
Strange and Sinister?
Yes.
Yeah, so Strange and Sinister it's actually a production group. So they do a lot of, like, independent, like, films, short films, silent films, a lot of, like, horror-esque kind of things. And one of the projects that they're working on now, currently being filmed, is a paranormal series. So they're some that's been filmed in like the Limp Brewery, and just different haunted spots kind of around like the local northern Illinois area. This upcoming weekend, we're going to, I believe it's Lake County Jail in Joliet to do an investigation there. So you can check out more Strange and Sinister, like on Facebook and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm doing a lot of filming projects with them.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Another from Dan here. Do you attend any paranormal themed conventions?
I have not. No.
Would that be something you might want to do in the future?
Yes. Into them, but yeah, I would be very into that.
Cool. I think, there's obviously a lot of horror, like film conventions, things like that, but I'm sure that's probably kind of crossover is pretty big. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to let you have a chance here to throw out any places that, the folks can find you, on social media, things like that, the St. Louis group and anything else you're working on. So if you want to do that real quick.
For St. Louis Paranormal Research Society, seeaghost.com. You can book haunted tours and things there, and you could also book private seances and things like that. Strange and Sinister, you can find them on Facebook. And then my personal Facebook is just Rachael Murphy. You can find me there. Yep.
Cool. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for being on tonight. And we'll have to have you on again for a show about Ouija board movies or something sometime. Yeah. We'll find out for once and for all which is the best and which is the worst. So.
Good. Top 10.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone watching in the chat. Also, did want to let you guys know that we will have another episode of Art Bell Classics coming probably the end of the week. Next week, Jonathan and I will be back with another episode of Television Terror. We'll be doing a review on 2 past television horror anthology shows. And we'll have some other stuff coming up. I can't think of what's coming up, but we'll have some other stuff coming up. So let me make sure we have no more questions. I guess not. Rachael, thanks again so much for being on tonight. Appreciate it. And until next time, guys, we'll see you.